everyone, welcome to the WildChat. We got another episode on tap for you guys today. We are a part of the Big Banter family, so make sure to check out at Big Banter Sports for all of your Big Ten sports content, as well as at the WildChat for all of your Northwestern-related sports content. So I think we should start by breaking down that game against Penn State. The score wasn't too pretty, but what do we think otherwise?
I think the score doesn't really reflect what happened in that game. I think what kind of happened in that game was Northwestern proved that they are a lot better than what people think this team is. You know, they kept it close throughout 2.5 quarters of that game. You know, they were tied going into halftime with the 6th best team in the country. The defense in the first half actually looked like they knew what they were doing. And, you know, the offense obviously struggled. I think we expected that against the Manny Diaz. But I think the biggest thing that stands out to me was David Braun knows how to coach a defense. The defense looks good. It's what we kind of expected a little bit maybe coming into the year with him being hired as the defensive coordinator and with defensive experience. So I think that what we take away from this game is that the team is better than what we expect. Obviously, the second half didn't go the same way as the first half. However, I don't think you can really expect Northwestern to kind of keep up for an entire 4 quarters. It would have been a miracle if it did happen. But the way they played that first half of the game really just says a lot about the team.
I mean, I honestly don't even want to talk about this Penn State game at all. If I'm going to be honest.
You really want to keep this podcast short?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't really think playing the number 6 team in the country really has any indication about what this team whatsoever. I mean, the only reason Northwestern was in the game in the first half is because they got lucky on the opening kickoff. They scored a quick 3 points. But at the end of the day, I mean, the offensive line got completely overpowered. The offense didn't look good in the second half whatsoever. And outside of a couple plays here or there in the first and second quarter, I mean, it was a pretty, there wasn't much to write home about. Good vibes, don't get me wrong. Ryan Field was loving it when Northwestern was up 10-3, but after that it went downhill and it kind of just felt like any other thing. I think the biggest takeaways is, like you said, the defense, it looked solid at times. Did a pretty good job against one of the better run teams in the Big Ten. Did a good job kind of confusing Drew Aller for the first half, and then in the second half, Penn State did what Penn State did. So I think Northwestern shouldn't really think about the Penn State game too much. They should, they did a couple things well defensively, I thought, against the run. But it's really like they can kind of compete with some of the better teams in the Big Ten. They can compete with the best teams in the country. They have the talent on the roster. So knowing that and having that in the back, that's some good confidence heading into the rest of the season. I mean, this is if we look at the season, we split it up into quarters. This Howard game is the third game of the second quarter. And it's nearing halftime. It's a long season, but you got to come out with a vengeance against Howard. You got to come out with some power, some attitude like they did against Penn State. I think their start was really good. So if you got to take a big takeaway, I think they had a really good start. You just got to keep that going.
No, I agree. I mean, Penn State's first turnover of the season. The first time a team has led against Penn State, not necessarily tie-wise, but that's another stat that I have in my brain, and it'll just never leave. But there were good things, for sure. I think the first half was a great showing. We were one of the first teams to hold off Penn State for that long, which is really, really cool to say. I mean, towards the end, it completely fell apart, but we didn't think that defense was going to be able to stop the run game at all, like in any capacity. And that's been one of our low points, I think, for the 4 weeks prior. So that was really exciting to see, to be honest with you. But I think there were some things that didn't go so great. I'm thinking about Brendan Sullivan in that last little bit, went 2 for 6, had a beautiful pass that ended up in the hands of the defense.
Honestly, one of the better throws I've seen in my life.
It hit him right in the chest.
It was a dime, absolute
wide
dime.
Open. He was wide open.
Exactly.
Yeah, he was wide open.
And there was a little bit too much consistency, I feel like, with the play calling that Bajakian was doing. I just feel like we need a little bit more variety. And there was that one punt fake play, I believe, in the third quarter. And although we didn't get that 4th down conversion, that's the kind of things I want to see. We need some more variation from this team, not just the run screen or just keep running and then it doesn't work and then we get stopped and we go 3 and out. And there were also opportunities like that fumble recovery right from the first kickoff that we weren't able to capitalize on. Yes, we did get the lead. Yes, we did get a field goal. But in those kinds of situations, you think, okay, we're on the Penn State 11-yard line. Shouldn't we get a touchdown here? Shouldn't we be able to go that 11 yards? Penn State has a great defense, though, so I can't really blame Northwestern entirely. But those are the things I'm thinking about going into the Howard game that might not be as good. I know we're projected to win, so I'm hoping that we do, but there are still some hiccups that I think can be fixed. But overall, I was really impressed with Braun's play calling or defensive play calling, and I just think that he's done a really good job with this team so far, and it showed this past weekend.
And I think people might want to like take away that the defense still gave up 28 points in the second half. However, I don't think that also tells the full story, because I think the offense was just so terrible in that second half that Penn State ended up starting 3 drives within their own 40, I think, because there were multiple fourth downs that they went for, just didn't get it. Penn State taking over pretty easily. So even in the second half, I don't think the defense is as bad as some people might think. Obviously, the offensive line is probably the biggest issue on this team. I saw some stat, I believe, that Penn State pressured Northwestern 45 times in that game, which is kind of unreal to think about. Yes, that's a product of the Manny Diaz, defensive play calling, where they bring a ton of pressure, but also Penn State has, one of the best defensive fronts in basically the country. So while the offensive line sucks, it's really not a test that they're going to be going up against kind of the rest of the year. You look at some of the opponents the rest of the way, it's a lot easier of a path. And honestly, I think this Howard game is coming at maybe the perfect time. The way the schedule almost worked out and the way that the season has gone on so far is probably one of the best, because you take a loss like this Penn State game and you think, okay, you just had a big win against Minnesota, and then Penn State just ruins all that momentum. Now you get a pretty easy game in Howard to kind of get to come back and build up that momentum once again, and then you get a bye week to then go ahead and prepare for the rest of your Big Ten onslaught, where you then go ahead and play Nebraska, which is another winnable game, I would say, for this Northwestern team. So all of a sudden, our outlook on the season, I think, has kind of completely changed. One more thing on the running game and the defensive running game. When we talked about the UTEP preview, we talked about how UTEP we thought was going to run for 300 yards against Northwestern's defense. And now you come back and you look at what the defense just did, stopping Penn State's running game, and it's just completely different. And just credit to David Braun for what he has kind of done with the defense. That's, I think, my biggest takeaway.
I honestly think the biggest news with Northwestern football, though, right now is honestly, outside of this Penn State game, outside of this Howard game, recruiting. And also, obviously, today, Pat Fitzgerald officially suing Northwestern for $130 million for wrongful termination over what happened in the offseason. But let's stick positively and talk about recruiting. Northwestern this week picking up massive two big guys. Tito Williams, the safety, kind of showing that David Braun has some recruiting, in his DNA. He's able to pick up these guys. Williams, the safety, he picked Northwestern over Ole Miss and Vanderbilt, two pretty solid schools. And then even bigger news, both in recruiting and also just as the fact that he's 6'9". Newbill, the offensive tackle.
Can I say nice?
What?
Can I say nice?
Go for it.
Okay, nice. Anyways, keep going.
Great. Austin Newbill, the tackle who came in over the weekend for a visit, got some photos taken, saw the facilities and everything, and I guess, wanted to stay here. That's a huge pickup, especially with, some of the offensive line issues that we've seen this year. Northwestern kind of looking towards the future in those two aspects. So I thought those honestly are my big takeaways of happy things going on with the program. Penn State game, you play the number 6 team in the country. The talent mismatch was clear in the second half, and that's just it comes down to that. So I don't think that there's really that many big things to take away from that game. It's kind of just move on. Playing Howard, you have a chance to go into the bye week 3-3. Every single opportunity that you want to accomplish this season is still on the table going into the second half of the year.
One thing I want to say about recruiting is I think that also says a lot about David Braun and maybe what he possibly thinks about his potential to be more than just an interim head coach. Because if David Braun was here thinking he's only here this 1 year, maybe he's not necessarily trying super hard to bring in some recruits for future years. However, if he's doing a good job bringing in some of these guys and getting some commits, that maybe tells me that he possibly thinks that he has a job in future years, or at least has the chance to get that job.
And that's Aiden Newbill, not Austin. Excuse me on that. But absolutely. And there was a quote last week that I'm pretty sure Inside and you picked up on, where he was basically like, we're looking at trying to bring in high character guys here who can, high academic, high athletic ability. That's something that an interim head coach wouldn't be saying. So I think there's definitely signs pointing to David Braun has an opportunity to stick around past the interim gig. But we've talked Penn State, we've talked some news. Why don't we, come up with some hot takes about Northwestern football right now. What's going through your brain? Throw something on the table. Let's debate.
All right, I got one that I got a lot of flack for writing about last week. Or this week, actually. This week just feels really long. I think David Braun should stay for at least another year. I think he shouldn't be interim. I think he should get that head coaching position for at least next year. And here's why. I think one of the most important things that he's done is not necessarily on the field, but in the locker room. I think through the way that this team has performed and through the way that this team has stuck together, especially I'm looking at that 21-point comeback against Minnesota, which was absolutely amazing to watch, and because it happened in such a short amount of time as well. And I believe reading notes from the presser afterward, David Braun described them being ready to go. Like, we got this, coach. We're going to go into the second half. We got this. Don't worry. And so clearly he's doing something right in the locker room, which I think is the most important, especially after this team was in shambles starting the season off with quite the hefty off season. And I think that's the most important part, is that he's been able to bring this team together. Not to mention, I really liked the defensive play calls he was making that first half. And again, you mentioned the talent differential between us and Penn State. I get that. But I liked the calls that he was making. I think he was doing pretty well in a game that we never expected our team to do that well, even for a half.
It's kind of interesting with David Braun, because beginning of the year we were talking, how does he keep his job? How does he make that interim job no longer an interim? And we said 4 wins potentially, right? That could get the job done. But he's had 2 massive wins this season, both at home. The UTEP game, magical first win for Northwestern in a really long time. You come back against Minnesota, and you kind of get everything that Northwestern football needs, right? There's that atmosphere, there's those positive thoughts. Looking at the rest of the schedule, there's 4 more winnable games, right? You have Howard. You've got Nebraska after that, after the bye week. Sure, going to Lincoln's never easy, but this Nebraska team's not great. You beat Nebraska, you have 4 wins, and you beat Howard. I'm assuming that. And then you play Maryland and Iowa, 2 tough games. You could beat Iowa, who knows? Maybe they're not a great offensive team. And then Purdue and Illinois at the end of the year. Wisconsin's in the middle. I don't think that they're going to compete against Wisconsin. But Purdue and Illinois, 2 teams struggling. There's a path to 6 wins. There's a path to a bowl game. Does Northwestern get there? I don't know. But you got to better believe if Northwestern gets to 5 wins, David Braun, I mean, it's going to be 2024 for him.
I mean, to be fair, everyone at Big Banter except for us predicted 2 wins from Northwestern. So if we can
what did
win,
we go? Did we say 4 wins?
we said
I think
4.
we said 4 wins.
We're looking really smart right now.
Yeah.
We're looking fantastically
If
smart.
they go on a win against Howard, we win. I mean, do we really win? I don't know.
Well, if Price
We
is
win.
writing it, then we've still gone over.
We win in our hearts.
Yes.
I think. Which I've loved the fact that we've even gotten to this point where talking about having more than 2 wins is a possibility. And I do attribute a lot of that to Braun, which is why I'm on the Braun train. I like David Braun. Give me flack for it. I don't care. Yeah, that's my hot take.
I don't think it's a terrible take. I'm still on the
Thank
wait
you.
to see train, but I don't think it's a terrible take. You're about to hate my take.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
Northwestern finishes 7-5.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. Hear me
Oh,
out.
my God, that's hot.
So you talk 6 wins, and I like, if we were being realistic, I think that is a still it's a medium take. We're going hot takes, so go big or go home.
Let's
7-5.
turn the stove on.
Howard, Nebraska,
Nebraska.
Illinois, Purdue. I think those 4 have to be it, and then you're looking at Wisconsin, Maryland, Iowa. I'm thinking Iowa at Wrigley. Wrigley Field is special. Last year, Northwestern baseball,
Yep.
they had a tough year. They go to Wrigley and play Notre Dame and have some crazy Wrigley magic, win on a walk-off hit with some crazy comeback. Wrigley magic with no Cade McNamara. I think Iowa's offense obviously going to struggle. I really like what's happened from the defense. I think Northwestern can knock off Iowa at Wrigley. I think that's going to be that 5th win to move Northwestern to 7-5. That's my hot take.
That's sizzling. It really is.
Last time Northwestern beat Iowa, they were ranked 10th in the country. This Northwestern team, not quite that, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it.
Look,
I don't hate it either.
Ashleigh has written, and I'm stealing this, Northwestern scored 13 against Penn State. How much did Iowa score against Penn State?
Very true. Iowa couldn't do it, but we could. So there's a chance.
So what about that Ryan Field magic, though?
Ryan Field magic kind of dissipated in that second half, I feel like.
A little
Here's
bit.
the issue. Too many students stayed in the second half.
I agree. We thrive on the energy of that loyal few. There were too many loyal few. We need the few. The few is the key part. The team's a little shy. They're a little.
They like to play in a quiet fortress.
So what I
The
noticed,
fortress is loud.
what I noticed was after it was 38-10, with like 2 minutes left, that's when most people left the stadium. How many points after it was 38-10 did Penn State score?
They're just shy.
0.
They like the quiet.
Exactly.
They're used to the library. They're used to studying for exams.
I think that we should start calling Ryan Field the library.
Yes.
I think
I
that's
love
the new,
it.
I think that's the new nickname for it. It's just it feels right. Anyway, entering Ryan Field on Saturday, 2:00 kick Central. Howard Bison football team that has had a solid season. They are second in their conference so far, but they're led by a really solid quarterback, Quinton Williams. Has thrown for over 800 yards in the year, 8 touchdowns, only 1 interception. This is a guy who can really fling the ball, and if Northwestern's not careful defensively, especially in the secondary, they can get burned. Solid receiver depth on this team. They've got 4 guys who have rushed for over 100 yards. Kind of a running back by committee for this Howard team, but a team that has the talent. And Coach Braun has talked about in the presser the other day how it doesn't matter any level of college football, especially coming from North Dakota State. He's not going to take an FCS team under any different kind of game plan as an FBS team, right? Still a college football team. They still got talented playmakers. And remember, last year Northwestern lost to SIU, a game that everyone thought.
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't remember this happening at all. It didn't happen.
My bad. It got erased from my memory. But nonetheless, a game that everyone thought Northwestern would beat, would win handily. This kind of feels like a game where if Northwestern doesn't win by 20, 25, maybe 30, it's a little bit of a disappointment.
Especially after UTEP, where we did accomplish that. I agree with you. This team does have a lot of depth, which I think I think the team goes a little underrated because they're in the FCS. But I think one of the keys is going to be keeping that zone coverage tight. Because that's something I noticed against Penn State, is that they were getting off passes that just were getting through our zone coverage because it just wasn't tight enough. They were too spread out. Receivers were just getting open super easily. And even up from the press box, it was very obvious that there was a little bit of miss there, especially in the second half. So I think I don't know, if we're going keys to the game, I'm thinking zone coverage has got to be tighter than it has been. Because if we let those, you said ran for over 100 yards, they have a good wide receiver core. Not that I know a lot about the Bison because I haven't necessarily followed them, but I think, we did lose to SIU. You can't treat a team differently just because they're not in the FBS.
I obviously don't want to overlook Howard, but this should be a game that Northwestern kind of uses to build on some things that they haven't necessarily had the chance to do. I think this is the type of game where, getting actual game time is going to be the best practice that you're going to get looking forward. And so it's something that I really want to see where if Northwestern is able to, build up that lead early on, let's see them try some new things offensively. That's something that I want to see. I wouldn't mind, if Brendan Sullivan, honestly, if he plays the entire game, Northwestern should be able to win. This is a game that Northwestern should be able to win with Brendan Sullivan. If you want to get him some reps, go get him some reps. Obviously, I'd love to see the offensive playbook just get open, just try some things. And I think that's one thing that I'd want to see in this game.
I would actually, if Ben Bryant's okay to go on Saturday, I don't want Brendan Sullivan in there at all. I think that game time reps and game action is critical and key. And maybe
but you also don't want to risk him getting more injured.
Of course. And if Northwestern's up by a significant amount in the third or fourth quarter, then okay, sure, put Brendan Sullivan in. But I think Ben Bryant needs the time on the field, personally. However, I think the biggest thing for Northwestern offensively is just some balance. It really is. Against that Penn State defense, they were trying to throw the ball every play because the run game wasn't working. They were getting outmanned at the offensive line. And I think that's the number one thing, too, is, you've got to win at the line of scrimmage. The offensive line is going to have the advantage, I think, in this game. Something that they're not going to have really for the rest of the season. So take advantage of it. Run the football.
Build some confidence as well.
Exactly. Build some confidence. Run the football behind Cam Porter. Joe Hyman, too. I'm a big Joe Hyman guy. But just, have that balance offensively. You don't need to be throwing every single down. Take the pressure off Ben Bryant a little bit. And remember, against Minnesota, when Northwestern was running the ball a little bit, took the pressure off. The offensive line held up. Ben Bryant had time in the pocket, found Bryce Kurtz downfield. I mean, that, he had his career day. So it all starts with some balance offensively in the offensive line, winning at the line of scrimmage. Those are the keys against Howard. Do we have any score predictions?
I'm thinking 35-10 maybe. I don't think Howard's going to go scoreless at all. I definitely think that they have the ability to score at least a touchdown, maybe 2. I'm going to say safe and go right in the middle, go 10. But yeah, I think Northwestern pulls it off. I think we have the talent. I think despite our Penn State loss, I think there's still a little bit of momentum there going in, because that was one of the hardest, if not the hardest game we're going to play all season. So I believe it is based on rankings. So I think we have good enough momentum from that first half where it's like, hey, yeah, we can hold the number 6 team to 10 points in the first half. Like, we could do it. So I think that'll help. I'm sure the loss didn't build confidence, but hopefully that built some sort of confidence. I think that's going to help lead this team to the win.
Do we have a line yet? Has there been a spread posted?
I'm
very curious about that.
Last time I checked, there wasn't.
Because I want to make my prediction around that line, if possible. My guess is it's somewhere in like the 17 to 20 range. Do we have one yet?
98% Northwestern.
That's
according to ESPN.
But that there is no line yet.
There's no line yet. Okay, well then, you know what? I'm just gonna
wing it.
You're just gonna go for it.
I kind of like 35-10. I'm gonna go a little bit more heavy on the offense side. I'm gonna say 45-10.
I like 45-10 for Northwestern. I think this game's gonna be a little bit closer than we might think it is. I think that if you look earlier in the year, Howard only lost Eastern Michigan by 10. Sure, it's Eastern Michigan, but that's no joke of a program over there. I think that Northwestern might struggle stopping the run a little bit with a balanced rushing attack from Howard, but I still think that they get the win. I think Northwestern puts up 30, Howard puts up 23, and they squeak by into the bye week with a win, get to 3-3, escape, move on to the second half of the season, and call it that from there.
Imagine being 3-3 going into the bye week.
Northwestern has a chance to go into Lincoln with a chance to go 4-3 if they can pull this one off. I don't think any of us would have.
I would not have put my money on that. I mean, I would have said there were 3 potential wins, and that would have been Rutgers, that would have been UTEP, and then obviously this Howard game. But I mean, this is the most winnable game of the entire season left. After this, the Big Ten Gauntlet, or at least the Big Ten West Gauntlet, which isn't really a gauntlet, but the Big Ten West competition heats up a little bit.
Hold on, before we end this.
Yeah.
Be Real just went off. We have to do a podcast, Be Real.
We have to do a podcast, Be Real. Okay.
You going to get in, Adam?
I'm going to get in.
Okay, you can finish this off now.
And, great.
Is it done? Okay.
You got it, Dylan?
Yeah, I got it.
Nope. Podcast Be Real. All good?
Yeah, we're good.
Perfect. Gorgeous, beautiful. Are we finishing? My turn?
Of course.
Lovely. So thank you guys so much for listening to the WildChat. We love when people listen to us talk since we like talking so much. Make sure to subscribe and like and share with your friends. And we're a part of the Big Banter Sports family. It's at Big Banter Sports. And don't forget to check out the website, bigbantersports.com, because there is a blog on there. You might see a piece by yours truly on there soon. Hopefully. Yeah, so thank you guys. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Go Cats.